So welcome everybody. This session is about our new strand of the One Oldham Fund, developing recovery communities grants. We're just going to run through a brief presentation and there'll be time for some questions and answers later. I'll stop recording when we have our questions and answers, just in case anybody has any, so feel free to have any discussions you want. I'm just going to introduce Julian Guerriero to you from Oldham Council, and Julian can tell you a little bit more about the background to the grants, and then I'll go through the more specific detail about the grants. I'll just go through the slides. Okay, Julian, just give me a shout when you want to move the slides on.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Julian Guerrero. I'm the Complex Dependency Reducing Reoffending Lead at Oldham Council. I'm based within Community Safety. My title reflects sort of the focus of my work really. My work is really working with public health in Oldham in supporting our Drug and Alcohol Treatment Commission. And that involves working with drug and alcohol services to support people in treatment and support individuals who've got problems with drugs and alcohol to be able to move into recovery as well. What I've asked to do today is just to give you a really quick overview, and there's only 5 slides and there's an incredible lot of detail behind the slides actually. So if there's anything that you need me, please reach out and ask me to forward you anything that I've commented on today in this presentation. I'm not going to go into massive detail. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of each of the elements. So over last year in December, the government announced it technically a drug strategy. That was for commissioners across local authorities and wider organisations to support them in developing our drug and alcohol offer in our local areas. And they released the From Harm to Hope documentation, which was really the 10-year plan to look at how we cut drug-related crime, but also for myself, more importantly, how we support those who need access to treatment. Next slide, please. The findings, a lot of the recommendations in the 10-year plan were actually based on research and work done by Professor Dame Black. And Dame Black has done a review of drug and alcohol treatment over the last 2 years back to government. And a lot of her recommendations have influenced in the 10-year drugs plan. Dame Black's very critical of areas way drug and alcohol treatment from the government has been left wander over the last 5 to 6 years, especially during that period of austerity. And actually what in that is not just down drug and alcohol services. She also looks at that wider impact of austerity on the impact on funding, reducing staffing in drug and alcohol services, lack of accreditation or having qualified staff to support people in treatment. She also looks at a lot of detail around how that's impacted members of our public and our communities as well. So she goes into a lot of detail about looking at increased drug and alcohol addiction and the rates of drug and alcohol addiction. And she also obviously highlights a lot of the areas that are in the news today as well, which is around increasing drug-related deaths. I mean, just in summary, so we had a new 10 years drugs plan released in December of last year, and that's really local authorities to implement the recommendations in that plan over the next 10 years. A lot of the information in the government's 10 years drugs plan is based on a review of drug and alcohol treatment, which was done by Dame Black, and she looked at she made key findings to the government about how they need to improve treatment and recovery for those people that were using or at risk of using alcohol. Next slide, please. One of our key findings was that over the last 7 to 8 years since we had austerity kick in, that there'd been a massive reduction in funding for drug and alcohol treatment, and that's basically, there's no surprises there why that's happened. Because so that was that overall treatment. is also reduced. And you can see from that slide there that has had an impact on the numbers of people, if young people and adults, moving into drug and alcohol treatment. And you can see by the graphs there in the Dame Cowell Black Review what that's looked like over the last couple of years. And drug and alcohol in general is reduced. Next slide, please. Over the Dame Cowell Black Review goes into an incredible amount of detail about the old treatment system, and she doesn't look at drug and alcohol treatment. She also the areas that impact on individuals and increased risk of individuals moving into drug and alcohol dependency. But she also looks at how those individuals are then supported in main treatment services, and also what the recovery offer is for those individuals as well. And when you look at the recovery offer, it's very limited to, or has been very limited in some areas, to really what's offered by mutual aid groups, and I'm talking about AA and NA organisations there. Commissioned drug and alcohol treatment services, they also deliver recovery orientated elements in their treatment programme, but what we're conscious of as commissioners is none of that really links back out to local communities, independent of commissioned treatment services. And one of the things we want to look at is how we wrap around relevant support for individuals, looking at peer-led recovery community organisations or developments support those individuals who've been through treatment, are in recovery. And, it's no surprise, not everybody wants linked into mainstream treatment providers once they're in recovery. They feel the need to be able to distance themselves from treatment. They're making that next step and they're moving on into, with the life, they're moving on into recovery, and they want support outside of commissioned drug and alcohol treatment services. And mutual aid groups, although incredibly useful and fantastic, they're not always relevant for everyone. Not everyone wants to engage with AA and NA organisations or organisations that are run on a similar basis. So we're quite keen that one of the elements of our treatment plan over the next couple of years is establish, we sustain recovery with communities, and now it becomes peer-led. And you can see from the diagram there that there's lots of strands to this work, but there is that strand there that looks at how we look at peer-led recovery and how we develop that in communities as well. Next slide, please. So the 10-year plan obviously looks, there's three key elements to the 10 years drug plan. One is very much about enforcement, and that's really about breaking drug supply and chains of drug supply, and others very led by police, predominantly. The second element is about how we deliver drug and alcohol treatment and recovery. That's really where we sit in Oldham and Rochdale, as commissioners. We're improve our treatment and recovery for our residents, but also what we've recognised, there also needs to be an element that's separate to commissioned drug and alcohol treatment services and distant from and not part of a statutory offer. So we really want to look at recovery, something that can be supported in local communities and those neighbourhoods where people live. And if someone wants to access a peer-led recovery orientated group, there's an opportunity to do that where that's available. So actually what we want to do as part of this funding is develop that, or start to develop that going forward over the next couple of years. And then obviously you can see the next part is about how we strengthen resilience, how we reduce recreational drugs on people who are at risk or involved in recreational drug use. But for the key part of recovery community developing recovery, we're really looking at that middle option there. So that's that's a really quick overview of the 10-year drug plan, where we're up to at the moment. There is an incredible amount of details that sits behind all of that, but it would take an hour to go through that at least. I'm happy to forward people any of that information for. Keen to do in Oldham, develop community offer outside and away from our commissioned drug and alcohol treatment services. For what that means is, what does recovery look like for residents in their own communities? For those individuals that no longer to link in with those commissioned drug and alcohol treatment services for whatever reason, either their treatment they don't feel there's need to, don't want to see different people that's still going into those treatment services, or they feel now able to move on, they want to distance themselves from treatment, but actually maintaining recovery, what that means for them is important. Actually being able to have those discussions or to work with peer-led groups or an organised recovery in their local communities is incredibly important. So the purpose of this fund is really to look how we develop that, or how we develop some of that in some of our neighbourhoods and districts. Over to yourselves.
So in terms of our grants for the One Oldham Fund, these are the principles we adopt with our funds now. These are the principles we adopt for all our grants. So we don't waste time, we only ask relevant questions, we accept risk, we act with urgency, we're open, we enable flexibility, we communicate with purpose, and we're proportionate. So just so you know, that's how we sort of handle all our grants now. So the background and aims for this particular grant, the Developing Recovery Communities Grant, it forms a strand of our One Oldham Fund. But this investment from Oldham Council is specifically to improve outcomes for individuals in structured treatment plans recovering from substance and alcohol abuse, and also to support VCFSE organisations, so that's voluntary community faith and social enterprise organisations who we support, our members basically, to make a contribution to those outcomes over time. On the slide, I've put a link to where you can find out more details about the grants, how to apply, and the guidance notes. So the priorities for the fund. So the priorities for the fund are, as I've set out here, the development and expansion of recovery communities and peer support networks for substance and alcohol misuse in Oldham. So the grant's not about providing treatments, the grant's not about substituting for those treatments, it's about the peer support, and it's about supporting those networks where people can come together. It's about increasing the visibility of recovery from substance and alcohol misuse and support social integration networks. And it's about improving networks of social connection so that people who face social exclusion through substance and alcohol misuse have the opportunity to live healthy and fulfilling lives through involvement in a community that supports their recovery, encourages social integration, builds their abstinence and well-being, and is led and organised by peers and families. So we can see the grant's very much about not providing the support, but not providing the treatment. It's about providing that wraparound support, the peer support, reducing stigma, increasing the social networks. So in terms of key information about the grants, applicants can apply for up to £5,000. Who can apply? So anybody who's a constituted member of Action Together, who's locally rooted and active in Oldham, can apply. It's free to be a member of Action Together, but to be a member, basically you have to be a non-profit organisation, and you have to be very either active in Oldham or based in Oldham, but we can support you through that process. So for the maximum project length, any projects need to, and funding needs to be spent by the end of March 2023. For the decision-making process, we've got an online community panel from different community groups, different community organisations, and also we'll have Julian will be on the panel as well. The deadline for applications is midnight on Wednesday, the 7th of September. We've only got a small pot of money for this particular grant. So we normally do like a rolling programme, but this is a one-off grant. But we'll see what goes from there. We're really interested to find out what comes from this grant, what kind of ideas, and whether the groups that do apply and are successful, they can support each other as well. So in terms of our grants, just so you know, for all grants, we do any sort of eligibility checks internally before it's sent to panel, and we'll come back to any groups if we've got any questions before it goes to panel, so you don't need to worry about eligibility. The other thing we do with all our grants now is that a community development worker for each locality is informed each step of the way, so they know when a group in their area has applied, they know what they've applied for, they know if they've got any questions, if they need any support around their application. We'll involve one of our community development workers at that point. Just bear with me, I think Julian's trying to get in touch with me, 1 second. Yeah, he's lost his internet connection, he's just trying to get back in. We do a quick turnaround with our grants. We aim to send the applications we have to panel by the 9th of September, and then we'd aim to give a decision within 10 working days after that. Julian's with us. Just let Julian connect. So in terms of what the money can be spent on, the money can cover sort of project delivery costs and equipment, running costs, volunteer expenses. There are very limited sort of exceptions. The best thing to do is ask. If anyone's applying and they're not sure whether they can apply, just ask either the grants team, can be so myself, or connect with the community development worker and ask any questions if they're unsure. Julian, I'll bring you in at the end to continue. I'll just finish. I'm just going through the sort of detail of the applications at the moment. In terms of successful applications, as I say, if somebody is successful, they will have ongoing contact with one of our community development workers to offer that wraparound support. You will be asked to sign a grant agreement, and that may contain any conditions specific to the grants. And then one of the questions we often get asked is what happens if something changes during my project. We do realise that often when people are drafting an application, there's a bit of that guesswork, and things do change, you know, circumstances change that are out of your control. The best thing to do, if anything changes from your original application, just get in touch and have a word with us, because we will be flexible. And it might well be that, you know, I've had circumstances, for example, where people have put an application in, it's included money for room hire, but then the room hire has been donated, so then we just allocate the money to something else as part of the project. So there is that flexibility, and please do speak to us, because we don't ever want to sort of turn away a good idea. And at the end of the project there will be a brief monitoring form that we ask you to fill in, and it's not about us checking up on you, it's about really to find out what impact the grant has had. Obviously we've asked you a question about how the money's been spent, but we're more interested in you telling us the story of what's happened and what impact the grant has had. We are just setting up a new training session to help groups tell the story, because I'm so bad at taking photographs. A, I forget, or B, I just am really bad at taking it. And you know, some of the monitoring we get back, it's great, but it doesn't really tell the story of what's happened. So in September we will be setting up a new training session to help you, just good pointers about how to take a picture or how to take a video, and that kind of thing is really, really useful for us, because in terms of monitoring, it helps us influence future grants, and it helps us to tell the story a lot better. I'm just admitting Mohammed. Hi Mohammed.
Hi guys, sorry I'm late.
That's okay. We've had a few technical problems anyway, so I am recording this and I will be sharing all the slides. I've just run through quickly about how the grant's going to work, the technical detail, but it's all set out in the slides and I will circulate those to everybody anyway. In terms of top tips when making applications, really the best thing to do is please read the guidance notes. When I talked about the principles of what we do earlier, we really have fine-tuned everything so that we only ask questions that we need the answers for. The guidance note, we try to put as much information in there as possible. Only answer the questions we've asked. If there's a temptation to try and put as much information as you can in there, but really do just read the guidance notes, answer the specific kind of questions, do put a clear budget in, because that's something that our panel always picks up on. If you want to say pay for staff costs for an activity, don't just put the total amount, put in there, for example, the amount of hours, the hourly rate, just so the panel can get a flavour of how the money's been spent, because they always pick up on that. And if you're not sure, ask. If you have any questions, please do get in touch with us before you put your application in. If you're unsure about anything, we're here to talk to you. Either Candice or myself from the grants team, or relevant development worker for your area we can connect you with. So please do ask any questions. What I'll do now, Julian, if you're ready, shall I go back to your slides and we can continue from there, if that's okay?
Thank you. Sorry about that. I seem to have an internet lag and it cut me out completely then.
I think we were on this slide, you're talking about
Yeah.
the Professor Day Carol Black, weren't you? So
yeah, so just in summary, so we have a new 10 years drugs plan released